Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Today I'm going to go through the fingering chart. I'm not including, for the most part, I'm not including sharps and flats with this. I'm showing you the major fingerings for the recorder, for the descant recorder, which is of course the soprano recorder. The soprano recorder is also called the descant. If you see that name, that's what it's referring to. So I'm basically going to show you all of the fingerings that you can have on the instrument of the recorder. It's not that hard to imagine, but I want to start off with a little story. One of my friends a few years ago had bought a recorder. She decided she wanted to learn how to play. Now, I hadn't taught her. I'd given her some hints here and there, but I hadn't really taught her. But she walked in where I was one day and she says, "I've got to tell you." She says, I'm learning how to play the most beautiful music. It's a wonderful song. I love the song. And I was curious about it because I really hadn't taught her much, but I'd just given her some hints. And I said, "Okay, why don't you bring it in? I'd like to see that song." So she did. She brought it in. And you know what she was playing? She was playing a fingering chart. She thought it was a song. And with the fingering chart, she was following the fingerings. And basically, if you're following the fingerings of a fingering chart, you're going to be playing a scale. So I don't know exactly how she got a song out of that. But you know, if you see a chart, I don't want to mess around with this too much because I don't want to lose my place. But if you see a group of holes, a group of instruments, and it shows one hole up, one hole down, and so forth, it's really showing a scale. Usually what you get is you get a scale. It'll go either from the lowest to the highest or the highest to the lowest. So if she was playing a fingering chart, which shows each note in sequence, she would be playing a scale. So I don't know how she came out with a song with that, but she was happy with it. And I explained to her, well, you know, that is a fingering chart, and it shows you how you play all of the notes in the instrument, how you finger them, what holes are open, what holes are closed, and that kind of thing. I thought it was an interesting story. So I'm going to start off, and I'm using this form, which I showed you last segment. That is a drawing that I made that comes from my sopranino that I took a photocopy of, and we'll go through this major scales. So, and occasionally I'm going to add a second one. The reason for adding the second one is that sometimes you have a note like an F that can be fingered in more than one way. But this would be your B, this would be your C, add them together and you get your A, G, F, E, D, and C. This is the form that I'll be using, but occasionally I put something in to clarify something. So we'll start off. And I'm going to start with the C, and I'll show it to you both on the recorder and through the chart, so you'll get a really good idea of how it is. All right, so the C that I'm showing you is like a mid-range C. It's on the third space up on the staff, and we play that C a lot. And so the way that you do that is your middle finger goes down and the thumb area back here is closed. It's like this. It's like this. This is a C. And the thumb is closed in the back, and the C is just that middle finger. So that top finger for a C is not pressed down, not for the C. As you can see right here, it's open. This is an open key. But the second one down is a C. Now, I'm going to go through this step by step, and I'm going to go through it note by note. So, so the next one that I'm going to go to is the B. And I mentioned before, the B is the top one. This would be the first finger. The first finger is the index finger, and right across from it is the thumb hole. That's the way that most of the recorders are made. Sometimes you get a little variation, and it's not exactly across from each other, the first note and the thumb hole, but usually it's pretty close. So if I'm going to finger that on the recorder, This B is right here. Whoops. It's right here, I guess, yeah. This was the C, and you flip this down, and this is the B, the top one, and the thumb hole is closed. So that B occurs on the third line up of the staff, and it's one note below the C, but the C is just this one, and you flip it, and the B is this one. So that's the way that it's done. Now the A would come next. You add those two together. The first finger and the second finger, and the thumb hole is closed. And the note is the A right here. It's the second note up on the staff. It's actually on the second space up on the staff. So A is right here. So you've got C, you've got B, you add another one, you've got A. And in all of these notes, these three notes, that thumb hole is closed, which it's hard to show you because it's on the back of the instrument. So this would be C, B, and A. C, B, and A. And all you do for other notes is you just keep adding it. This third one's going to be the G. So let me flip this over. I just want to make this as simple as I can. It may be too simple for some of you. You may say, oh, heck, I know that. But the thing is, if you see it, then it's much easier to learn it. So this G is on the second line up of it's the second line on the staff. And you see it's these three fingers plus the tone hole, B, A, G, plus a tone hole. And when I was teaching students, I went by that. I made up this word, bag fed, B-A-G, that's bag. The next one would be the F. So here we are. This is the G. So we have C, flip over B, A, G. And so if I'm playing it, now the next one is going to be the F. There's two ways of playing an F, which is why I added the second one, but let's the simplest way. B, A, G, F. You just add the first finger of the right hand. So if this is C, B, A, G, that's the left hand. When you start with the F, you start with the right hand and just put the next note down. That's the F. And now the second way of playing an F is if you have a recorder that's known as a Baroque recorder, and most of us do, then what happens, and it's shown, this is the way I've shown it. I've shown this fingering as a Baroque fingering because most people play Baroque instruments. The intonation's a little more accurate. So it's B, A, G, and then you put that F down, and then you skip the next one, and you add this one here. If you just had this one, it would be the E, B, A, G, F. And this is an F. But if you're having a Baroque recorder, then you add this other key. You skip this and add this key. Can you see? You can hear the difference in the tone, can't you? It just makes it a little bit lower pitched, which is probably the most accurate. That's why people use Baroque recorders, is they're a little bit more accurate on the pitch than the regular recorder. If you have a German recorder and your fingerings are the easier fingerings, then that F is just going to be this one. So how do you know if you have a Baroque recorder? On the tone hole, this is going to, I think, be pretty much impossible to show you, but you'd see it when you have have a recorder in your hand, there'll be a little B, and it's just a little imprint, and it's right on top of the thumb hole, sometimes on the bottom of the thumb hole. It's not too obvious, but it's right there, a little tiny imprint with a B. That means this instrument is a Baroque instrument. It looks exactly like any other instrument, but that little tiny B makes it Baroque, and that means to get the most accurate fingering, when you play that F, you need to skip this one and add that extra key. That's the F. If you're using a German fingering and you're using a regular fingering, it's almost the same. There's just a tiny bit of difference when you play it. But at any rate, this would be the Baroque. If it's not a Baroque instrument, B, A, G, F. The F starts the right hand down. The left hand is B, A, G, C, B, A, G. We start the right hand down with the index finger on that note, the fourth B, A, G, F, the fourth one down. Add that finger if you've got a Baroque. If you don't, then don't bother with it. Then B, A, G, F. So for the scale, so far we have C, B, A, G, F, or F like this. And where it is on the staff, it's going to be that first space. Remember, you can tell easily about what the notes are on the spaces because they spell face, F, A, C, E. This is going to be the F. This is the way that you play the F. And so it's not really hard to do that. You just need to keep that in mind. Now, F, whoops, I'm looking for another page here. Pages are getting stuck together a little on me. The next one would be the E. Now for the E, you just add another finger down. C, B, A, G. If you're playing a Baroque, this is the F. You will put the fourth one up and add that, and you have your E. Now, if you have a German recorder and you're not using Baroque fingerings, then just add the other finger. The easiest way to play is with a German recorder, but the fingering, the tone is not exactly as accurate as it is on a Baroque, and this is why most people play Baroques. B, A, G, F, E. Now, if it's a Baroque recorder, then the F, you're playing like this. Then you lift that fourth finger up, put the middle finger down, and you've got your E. So it really isn't that much of a change. It's just something you have to get used to. And that gives us the E. And the E is, of course, on the first line of the staff. The staff is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, numbering it from bottom up. And you can see all of these notes are now closed with the thumb hole also closed. So the next one is going to be the D, and that one is going to be covered. So let me just flip over there. This is the D, and all of these notes are covered, and the thumb hole is also covered. So you go, it's B, A, G, F, and that starts the right hand. Remember, for the right index finger, B, A, G, F, E, and D. I have those two little holes here, but they're both covered. When you cover a note and it has two little holes in it, you cover the whole thing unless you're playing a sharp or you're playing a flat, though that's why the double hole is there. So B, A, G, F, E, D, or if it's Baroque, B, A, G, F, and then flip. This is the E, and this is the D. And that pretty much covers the whole recorder, except for the C. the C has the little hole for the C is a little bit to the right. And the reason for that is that this is the way that your hand is. Your little finger isn't as long as the other fingers, and so therefore you need to accommodate that. And so you need to have that a little to the right. Now with these recorders, these nicer recorders, they come in 3 parts, and you can move this. I'm not going to do it now, but this is the foot joint, and you can move that into position so it is in line with where your finger is going to be. And as you can see, my little finger is right here, and it's not as far over as these fingers are. And so my right finger gets accommodated that way. So this is the D. Let's move it up to the C, the low C, and this is it. Everything here now is covered. This is covered, this is covered, B, A, G, F, E, D, and C. And this is the C. The C is middle C or low C. It's halfway between the treble clef and the bass clef. It has a little line right through it. That little line is called a ledger line. This is also called low C because the instrument cannot get any lower than this. It cannot get any lower than this. B, A, G, F, E, D, and then C. Now, a lot of times I don't play that C. It's not that I can't. It comes in clearly enough. But I had an injury to my hand when I was practicing once, and I pulled this finger right out of the socket. So my finger can't do the stretches as easily as they used to, because that could happen again. And so I'm real careful of that. But you can remember, just put that next finger down, and you've got that C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. And the thing is interesting because if I'm to pick up the flutophone, and the flutophone, by the way, is one of my favorites of these smaller instruments, and you can see that the tone holes are really close by. Now on a recorder, that C would be over here someplace, and there would be a finger stretch, which if you have a problem with finger stretches, as I do just for that one note, then you might have a little difficulty. Now I like the flutophone. It plays a full scale, it plays it in pitch, and it has a pretty good tone, and you can play a lot of music on a little flutophone. But they're not as complicated, of course, as what a regular instrument like this is. So that you see, everything is covered, all of the notes are covered, and that's where you get that. Now, I'm showing you this form again because what I'm going to do is show you a couple of other notes like sharps and flats and a little bit higher. Here's the instrument, the sopranino, which I photocopied, and they switched it so that you could get a side view of it, so then you can see it, you can see the tone holes, which I kind of etched in actually, plus you can see the thumb hole in the back. This would be the labium, this is the fipple mouthpiece, so I want to go on with this. There are a few more notes. Now this time I'm going to take it up. Here's the C again. Remember we did the C, it's the third space up from the bottom of the staff, and it's the middle finger. This is the C, and the tone hole is closed. So that's the C, and that's what we started with. This is what I started to show you to begin with, if you can remember that. And going on from that, I'm going to take you on some of the higher notes. Now, what about the D? The D is it's called a high D. The only finger down is going to be your second finger. It's going to be your middle finger. If you count your fingers, like the index finger is the 1, the middle finger is 2, the fourth finger is 3, it's going to be 2. And the tone hole here is open. So the only finger that you have down for that D is the one that we used for C. Only when we played the C, we had the tone hole shut. This is a C and nothing except that. So that's the D right there. And you notice there are no fingers that are closed at all. There only that one. The rest of these are all open. And the reason why it's so important to have a good balance with the instrument is the fact that when you're playing a note where there's only one finger down, it's real easy to drop it. You know, people do drop them. The larger instruments have straps to hold them in place so that you don't drop it. If you happen to lose it, somehow it just hangs down and it's on a strap. But we don't have straps for this. And so I would be holding my instrument with my right hand. When I'm playing that D, I would be holding my instrument with my right hand kind of securely. I might even have a hold of it on the bottom like that, because the only finger down that's playing is this middle finger on the second hole, and it'd be real easy to drop it. Now, having the instrument in my mouth is one way of securing it, and of course, if you're going to play it, then the instrument is going to be on your mouth, but there's no thumb holding it in place like you have for the other notes. But the thumb in the place also holds the instrument in place. And for most of the other keys and most of the other notes, you're using that thumb, and that thumb is closed, and that adds a little to help you with the balance of the instrument. But with the D, that thumb is not on there. That thumb is completely off, so that tone hole, the thumb hole, is completely open. And yet you can get the instrument to play the D very well. That's the way that you play the D. One hole closed, everything else is open. So when you play it, you need to make sure that you have kind of a grip on it with your right hand. You don't want to cover these holes. You just want to have them balance a little bit. And I can do that with my little finger easily. That's how you play that D, and that D is going to be the fourth line up on that staff. I got to start watching my time here. Now, from that point on, we go to the E. Now, the E is the same fingering as the E was when I showed it to you on the lower staff. Here's the high E. It's on the fourth space. The E that I showed you before when we were going down the scale is on that first line. That would be the octave of it, but we're using this higher E. Now, the fingerings for the E is just the same as it was for the lower part, but the only difference is I'm going to half hole, and I'm going to leave half of the thumb hole open. The other half is shut. So what I do with the thumb holes, I've showed you before, I'm going to withdraw my thumb a little bit, just a little bit. I'm not really going to withdraw it even halfway, enough so that part of it is open. I don't know how well you can see this, but a part of it is open. The fingering for the E is going to be the same. Remember, we did it B, A, G, F, E. And to get the octave, I'll take that thumb hole and I'll move it a little bit so there's a little bit of spacing there, and it'll automatically bounce that low E into a high E. Remember, the F that we did for Baroque was like this. And then when you do the E, you lift this and you put this one down. That's your E. And if I just take the thumb hole and open it up a little tiny bit, I'm going to get the octave up. That's the only difference. If you're using a German instrument, it would be no different. If you're using an F on a German instrument, it's B, A, G, F, and the E one finger down. If you're using a Baroque fingering for the F, B, A, G, F, and you add that finger, you take this finger up, you put the middle finger down, you've got your E. And then in order to get that octave, you just loosen up on that note in the back, the thumb hole in the back, withdraw it a little bit, and you're going to do the same for the high F, you're going to do the same for the high G. So let me go on to the high F. Now the high F, you have the two ways of fingering it, just like you did before. B, A, G, F. Only you use a thumb hole, just keep the thumb hole half open. And in this, B, A, G, F, and you skip one and put the other one down, as I've shown you before. This is the Baroque fingering for the F, but you just pull that down a little bit and you get the high F. That's the way you do it. Now, I don't have much time left. I don't want to run over my time, but we obviously are going to have to do this, finish this up in another segment. So I'm going to spend at least one more segment on fingerings, and I'm going to show you some tricks, like, for example, how do you play an F sharp? How do you play a B flat? You know, how do you play a C sharp? There are some sharps and flats that are used more commonly than others, and you need to know the fingerings for those too, because they appear quite a bit in the music. So I'm going to close it here, and we'll just continue with this until we finish it. You have to know how to finger the notes if you're going to play an instrument, any instrument. So we may as well find out what they are now. And we'll close it here. Please join me next time.